Welcome back to Ignition Point. I'm Debbie Hart.
Sean Finnegan.
And today we have an esteemed musical guest, Paul Cardall himself.
Yeah. Let me just say quickly, and we're going to do his intro here.
Yeah.
But I've told multiple people, hey, we have Paul on. Everyone's like,
Oh,
love that dude.
I know.
Yeah, I've listened to his music for years and years and years.
My daughter was begging to come.
Same.
And I said yes, but she couldn't find a babysitter.
Oh.
And I told him, while we were setting up, she literally listens to his music every single day.
Dang.
Studying and
Dang.
just peaceful.
Man,
That's probably the best.
you are
intro.
raising this girl right. She's
intro
got
there
good
is.
taste.
Her and I grew up singing
Yeah.
together in church.
I love it.
So.
The fact that you've made an impact on that many millions of people, this is probably the best intro. Her daughter waking up every day to your music.
Every single person that listens, I've never considered them a fan. I see them as a client. And I'm just blown away
You deserve.
by the response. You know, you just do what you love, and
Well, for those of you
That's
who
amazing.
don't know who he is, Paul Cardall is a Dove Award-winning musician, composer, and producer. Is celebrated for his music that serves as a conduit to tranquility and spiritual introspection. With over 3 billion lifetime streams, 11 number 1 Billboard albums, and recognition as one of the world's premier pianists from Steinway & Sons. Paul's diverse repertoire spans classical, Christian, and New Age genres. His extraordinary journey includes overcoming health challenges, notably being born with half a heart, and undergoing a life-saving heart transplant in 2009. Inspired by these experiences, Paul has made it his life's mission to craft healing piano music that resonates physically and emotionally. So please welcome Paul Cardall.
How many strings?
How gifted are you?
Is it 3 billion?
yeah,
Did you say 3
Billion.
not crazy. Isn't that crazy?
It's wild.
It's crazy. You know,
Most artists do not ever achieve that level of reach.
like, what do you think of when you hear that?
Yeah.
what's interesting to me is I started my career in Salt Lake City. I live in Nashville now. So I built my business here. I started a record label. I had a big studio, and I thought Nashville, everybody over there is doing that.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Nashville, just because we felt led by God to go there, I didn't know anybody. But once I got there, I was visiting studios, and I was like, hold on, wait a second. I think everyone's just trying to get by.
Right.
Everyone's trying to figure it out.
Struggle.
I thought professionally they knew what was going on. And this is not just a place of country music. And there's hip hop, there's jazz, there's everything over there now. But looking back at what we built here in Salt Lake, it was basically because I wanted to create quality. I wanted it to be competitive. And I don't say this in a like an arrogant way, but I was disappointed when I went to Nashville and didn't see the level of beauty in the studios. It's hard to say.
You probably put it up on a very high pedestal, and you can figure that everyone gets 1 billion streams there.
Yeah. At one point, we were. I say we, me, my team. We were out streaming Taylor Swift on Pandora until about 4 years ago. And the great thing is, I can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And nobody knows
Yeah.
who that is.
Right.
That's the best part.
So where did you started? Were you always into music as a young child?
I took piano lessons as an 8-year-old, but I hated it.
Not those piano lessons.
Exactly.
It's like, when am I going to ever make money on that? Yeah.
Right.
I need a quarter.
Yeah.
So like 6 months, one recital, I was out of there. But I loved music. I was so passionate about all kinds of bands. Everybody knows their first album they bought. Sean, what was your first record?
Dude, so mine was U2.
The Joshua Tree?
Really?
Yeah, the Joshua Tree.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
That's
so
epic.
they did a Joshua Tree tour. It was maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And Bono literally said, okay, side 2. And I remember side 2. Literally, I'd turn the cassette over and listen to the other side.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Cassettes.
Yeah.
I took my paper out money and I was spending it all on cassettes. I was absorbing music. The Smiths. Duran Duran, some George Michael. Yeah. So
I went through my teen girl phase of Alanis Morissette. in the
Oh.
90s.
What was your first album?
my first album was Rio by Duran Duran.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. And then I found Rush. And when I found the band Rush, probably the greatest progressive rock trio band of all time, I began to I was so obsessed with their music, I began to try to figure out how they were so successful because they weren't on the radio.
Right.
They were
It
totally,
was obscure at the time.
yeah, nobody wanted to listen to their music.
Yeah.
So,
Obscure band out of Canada.
yeah.
So was that your spark?
Well, I think hearing that band led me to researching how they were able to be successful. So later on, when God poured into me as a junior in high school after a very close friend who played the piano, he died, and I was trying to figure out some personal stuff because I'd been born with congenital heart disease, had endured multiple heart surgeries, and I was trying to wrap my head around why is somebody so healthy? Why did they die in a tragic accident? And here we are fighting my entire life. My dad's, paying bills, everything. And I went to the living room where my parents had an old Kawai that I'd practiced on when I was 8. And I sat down and just pounded my anger, my frustration over his loss. And then I hit a couple notes just in a way that the tone, when you hear certain notes or a little melody, the tone just pours this warmth and love right into you. I felt God's arms wrap around me like a blanket, and though it wasn't verbal, here's why, it was I just had peace. So I became obsessed with sitting at the piano, processing feelings, and it evolved into creating melodies that turned into songs. And I wrote one called Dave's Farewell about my friend. I took it over to his parents, nervous. I didn't want it to be bad, but I just wanted to express to them my love. And I played it. And when they invited the neighbors over after to play it again and play it again, that's where I was like, oh, this must be something I should think about or pursue.
You tied the emotion of the moment into the music and the melodies of what you wrote.
Yeah.
Other people could feel that too. You were now this.
What was that process like?
Music is so powerful. Our bodies are made up of water, and so the certain vibrations that come through music, the tones, it resonates with us in so many different ways. This is the way God has designed it to affect us, release the dopamine, serotonin, increase serotonin. Music, for me, was a way to communicate my feelings about the divine, because God has played a very important role in my life, only because I was drawn to him early because I was with the congenital heart disease, facing death a lot. So typical kids don't think about retirement or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was always in the back of my head, coming out of surgeries. And so I would communicate all those feelings, and they would resonate with, everybody's going through some type of difficult thing. And no matter what recording artist you listen to, whether it be punk, rap, piano, I guarantee the fans say they really helped me get through this this challenge. So it's not like I have a universal patent on this type of thing. That's what music does. And it's important that we listen to music.
Remember those first breakups when you were young that put on?
Oh yeah, I had Yesterday on repeat.
Yesterday.
My first breakup.
Yeah. It does. It taps directly into the emotion of the
Lets you
moments.
release the tears and
Yes.
just feel the feelings. So you
Yeah.
can feel it.
I was talking about this the other night with my sister-in-law. We were talking about music from when we were in school, because I was in school during the 80s, which my kids think, well, that's so long ago. And I was telling her the song I hate the most is Krista Berg, Lady in Red.
Yeah. Right.
Because in junior high, I would walk this girl home that I really liked,
Yeah.
and then we had the dance, and they start playing it. I'm like, great, slow song. You go and you ask, and get out of your circles,
Yeah.
you go. And she, you know, and I'd been walking her home, and
Right.
and she, right in the middle of the song, goes, "Hey, listen, you can't walk me home anymore." And I'm like, "Well, why?" You know, I would call her every day on the phone. Well, why? And she goes, "Well, Days of Our Lives starts at 3:00, and
Of course.
and my mother
Who
wants."
could compete with Days of Our Lives?
I know, Patch, and yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
any of you remember that, but
Right.
but she goes, "My mother wants me to watch it with her."
Yeah.
That was a nice way to break up with
Yeah.
a kid that was obsessed with her. But
Right.
yeah, so Lady in Red, it's a trigger song.
Yeah.
It's a trigger.
Okay, this is how powerful music is, because
Yeah.
they have the exact opposite,
Okay.
yet equally powerful emotion tied to Lady in Red. I would hear that song
Okay.
in junior high and think, someday I want to marry a musician, someone that will write a song like that about me. And I thought that for years and years. And so, like, that
That's
song would
awesome.
make me dream about the future husband I would have. Sure,
Yes.
it wasn't a musician after all. But
Well, but beware of musicians. They're very emotional
I
creatures.
became one myself. It's fine.
Well, if musicians don't have an entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
it's unhealthy, because artists are emotional creatures, so there has to be this level of passion. For me, that's why I was studying everything about Rush. I was more obsessed with how the business worked than sitting at the piano.
Really?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's different.
And that's kind of what it's always been. You know, even Mick Jagger said 95% of his career is waiting to go on stage. 95% of my career is doing all the business aspects of it, running like a record label, being my own manager. Instead of freelancing graphic design, I learned it. I learned how to do websites. I learned how to do all this stuff because it was expensive in the beginning. And it's available to you to learn.
5% of your time's on the keys.
Yeah.
95%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
instead of having an agent or a manager, you just like the true entrepreneur spirit that you are.
Yeah, well, I didn't want it that way, but I experienced a manager for a time. I experienced an agent. I've had other people that have come into my life like flies,
Yeah.
and there's something about doing it yourself that I really, really enjoy. I don't think everyone should do that, but I like building something.
I feel like there's a big accomplishment in what you're doing.
Yeah,
But like you care about it more
Yeah.
than
No one's
anybody
going
else
to compare.
will.
it's customized.
Right.
Music is customized, and artists who know what their music is and how it helps people and how you communicate is the most important thing. My music is a resource to help people feel peace. My music is a resource to help people access the divine. And you communicate that message, but that message, I didn't know that in the beginning. It took time to craft and to mold that. And back to marrying a musician.
Actually, I was going to say, let's go back to the point of the story, where you were sharing and the neighbor's experience, what you were experiencing. How do you get from that point in time to 1 billion listens?
The key is to ask a lot of questions, to seek out people that are already doing it. Being born in Salt Lake City, there was a local music scene, so around the time that I was starting to learn all this, Michael McLean, Kurt Bester, you know, these are local artists, I would track them down just to ask for advice. People want to give you advice,
Yeah.
as long as it doesn't put them out of a job. And so you got to find these people, reach out to these people. And then obviously, you know, a lot of behind the music from VH1 over the years.
Yeah. You would
Re-
watch that as research.
Oh, Crash and Burn, Def Leppard.
Did you get through to some of them, like Michael McLean? We were talking about him
Yeah.
before we started filming. Did he answer you? Did he advise you?
He did, but I was fortunate because my dad was a broadcast journalist for KSL, which was the CBS affiliate. It's now the NBC affiliate. And Michael McLean, he told me, was part of their Bonneville Communication Marketing organization. So he basically gave me his number. He didn't call him for me. He gave me his number. And I reached out. I left, you know, some messages. Kurt Bester, I would just stay after shows. But Peter Breinholt is an artist that some of you may not know. He was he still is. He's an incredible artist. And I loved his music, and he was selling out shows, and he had a cassette and CDs. And I'm like, well, I need to know how to do that. So I found in the Yellow Pages, for those, this is the past. You have to go in the DeLorean to get to the Yellow Pages. But the White Pages too. The White Pages listed families. Right. So I couldn't find Peter, but I found his dad.
Wow.
So I took
Cold call.
Yeah, I took a little cassette that I'd made of a couple songs, and I went to the home and I knocked on the door.
Dang.
And I said, "Is any chance Peter is here?" And he goes,
Wild.
his dad looks at me like I'm, a salesman.
Stalker, yeah.
And he says, "No, he doesn't live here. He lives in Sugar House." And I said, "Well, this is some of my music. I just want some advice from him. I don't need anything else. I don't need a record deal. I just want to learn from him. So will you take this and give it to him?" He goes, "Absolutely." And then I didn't get a response. But then I found Peter where he lived.
We do that.
Persistence.
I knew he went to Highland High School, and I knew that there were a lot of performances that he was doing up at the University of Utah. My sister knew some people because she was also going to college up there. And I found out we were driving by, and somebody goes, "That's where he lives." So I knocked on his door, nothing.
Hey.
But I don't know how it ended up happening, but he was very gracious. And even though we do completely different music, he let me go with him to do a couple shows just to be around him. And I kind of learned the vibe. It wasn't like he was teaching me. Yeah. It was like he was letting me experience it.
To see if this is really the path you want to go down.
Well, I knew I wanted to go down it, but he was smart because he wasn't telling me how to do it. I got a taste.
Yeah, so much better.
Oh, when you get a taste.
I feel like it was the universe that got you there, it's God that got you there, because you set that out there and that with real intention, talking to the dad, getting the and then knocking on the door, all that stuff, and eventually you were just destined to meet.
My whole life's been wild.
Yeah.
I had no idea I'd be doing this stuff and the amount of people that are affected by it. And so often when we do our business and we do our work, we have no idea the impact it has on people. And every now and then you get a little compliment or something like that, just, realization of what's happening. But I think for me, the greatest lesson in business comes from Jesus. Because there was a woman who was an adulterous woman, had many husbands. Every day she has to go get water from this well, and that's what she would use to drink and feed everybody, to give everybody thirst, to wash and clean herself, just everything we need water for. And distraught, I don't even know what she was feeling, but a sense of depression. She goes to this well, and here's this man who makes her feel so valued. And then he reveals himself as the Christ. And she gets, the way he healed her in that moment, she goes back and goes back into the village. But here's the thing. Jesus, knowing how to grow his business, his followers, he walked for miles, just hundreds of miles, because he came up from Judea, just to meet this one woman. And whether you believe in the story or not, it's so powerful and so relevant because he had other business partners. And he knew those partners would not understand what he was trying to do. He had to teach them. She goes back and she tells everybody about him. Thus his business begins to grow, and everybody should go into business with God. And I feel so blessed that he came into my life early to save me and rescue me from all these medical procedures, and then over time spiritually. But having that relationship, I think, is key for anybody who is an entrepreneur, anyone that has discovered they have a gift. And above all, I think people don't understand their value. And God can give us our value.
I mean, I had a question that I was thinking, because you've had 21 surgeries, right? And like going through all that,
Yeah.
I think someone could potentially lose faith and they could get bitter, and then maybe they get angry at God for having to go through all the stuff you've gone through. How were you able to keep your faith through all that?
I've always, after my third major open heart surgery at 14, I knew Jesus Jesus of Nazareth had been resurrected. I had some experiences, and I knew that this is the God that of any God that we put before us. This is the God I want. This is the God I worship. He's a God who bleeds. He's a God with scars. I have scars. And so I really resonated with him.
It's inspiring, the faith you've had.
Yeah.
You've been able to understand that. It's just so beautiful what you said about scars.
Oh, and I'm a sinful man. I mean, he's conquered the sin. And we got to quit worried about everything we've done.
What's one piece that and maybe out of when you first started, you didn't know how successful you'd be. Maybe there was like that one piece.
Yeah.
I know that turned the corner for you in your career.
So life and death, and I'll get to this. Life and death was a theme I heard from Michael Giacchino, a 30-second theme, and it's from the show Lost. But every time somebody died, you'd hear this theme. So when I was in the hospital waiting for a heart transplant, I stayed in a children's hospital. Those were where the experts were. And they had a piano, and I wasn't sure if I was going to live. I had a 3-year-old daughter, and I would sit at the piano after everybody had left. They would wheel me out there. I had oxygen. I had an IV pumping all this fluid into me to keep me alive. And I would sit at the piano and just process emotion. And I took that theme and I embellished on it into like 5 minutes. And life and death came out of that. So a couple of years after the transplant, I recorded it. And it's not my most popular piece, but it is one of those. But it's this irony of life and death. Life and death, We don't think about our death. And when you do, it puts into perspective a lot of things. What do we truly believe? Who are the people that are most important in our lives? Do we need transactional relationships? No, absolutely not, unless they're founded in love and unconditional love. But see, this is what I was experiencing after my transplant, when I was really trying to dissect, why did God, I was on an operating table, they took my heart out. It's like Lazarus, I've gone into this tomb. And God has given us the knowledge and gifted science and gifted medicine, and they took my heart out. Clinically, I'm dead. But we figured out a way. They temporarily raised me from the dead.
Yes.
I get to live a little longer. So this is why I have no quarrel about a man from Nazareth claiming to be God and then being crucified and being brought back from the grave. We don't even know how the pyramids were built.
Right.
We know nothing.
Yeah.
We think we know everything.
Sure.
Because we can't comprehend it. It's just too crazy.
But to you, to a degree, you've experienced that personally.
Yeah, and I want people to experience that. I want them to feel this revival that you have, where God comes in and wrecks your life to where you become so submissive and realize that everything else is keeping you from the freedom, the liberation that Christ wants to do. And so when all my friends were saying to me, hey, ask him into your heart, I'm like, well, my heart's not mine, but I'm going to do this. I was running on a treadmill, and I was just angry. I was angry. I'd gone through divorce. So see, those of you that are in a church are going to go, oh, we got divorced, so he's got issues. Went through a divorce, nearly died. A lot of other things I could go on and on. And I was struggling to understand my value with God and my place in a church that had basically held a court. The only court I know about in the Bible is when they brought in Jesus to place judgment on him, to excommunicate him. I just got divorced. I mean, there was no excommunication, there was no disfellowship, but still I have a court. So finally, I had run on the treadmill, sobbing, and I said, Lord, my friends who I have seen you change them from being alcoholics to pastors, from sex addicts to good people, good neighbors, good this and good that. I want a transformation. I want to change. I want you to change me. So Lord, Jesus Christ, come in and wreck me. Turn over all the tables here in this temple. And I kid you not, over the next 2 weeks, freedom in my brain. All of the theological things I was so passionate about and used to love to consider that I'd been anointed a king. There's only one king. And there's a verse in the book of Revelation that says, basically the greatest test will be, are we willing to lay our crowns down before the king? So I think you can be in a church, have those same relationships, and I'm not saying a church is a bad thing. We need community, we need church, and I go to church. But an orthodoxy or a fundamental church that says this is the way, the only way, that's what Christ said.
Yeah, sure.
He said this is the way and the only way. So I think the real test for, if I was still in that church, come Judgment Day, I think the test is, am I willing to forego powers, principalities, kingdoms? Am I willing to put my crown before the Son of God and the Father? So, that takes us down a theological path. But
I think it's important that we understand, though, where you're coming from in your faith, because you've been in tune. Like what you said is like God has directed your music, and it's under you. It's almost like the VH1 behind the scenes. This is the behind the scenes, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm the Def Leppard. Def Leppard
has
episode.
created this genius artist, and you feel like you've tapped into your faith in God through your music and through your life.
I appreciate that. It's it's a never-ending road for all of us.
Journey.
And I think it's Neil Maxwell, one of my favorite spiritual leaders, that was part of that. The old narrative. It's a completely different narrative, different church. But he said that it's a customized curriculum, that the Lord knows what he needs to do in your life to teach you the things you most need to know. So I'm not advocating somebody to leave a church. I'm advocating you pursue Christ. You invite him into your life, and you got to clear off the table of everything you've ever been taught. Get rid of it all, because we're indoctrinated by our culture and everything around us, and it's a beautiful thing. But you need to clear it all off and really start putting on the table Jesus, and then what else? What else?
Yeah, I'm glad you it's like, I think you're in I call it Hollywood, and you're in Nashville, but you're in a world where this isn't a norm for someone to be willing to, in public, talk about your faith openly to people.
But do you see what's happening? Do you guys see what's happening? A friend of mine, Andy Irwin, has a company called Kingdom Story. They make films, and they started by doing a Christian film about a football team. Then they did Bart Millard's story of Mercy Me, a friend of mine, Imagine, you know. Then they did American Underdog. And so what they did though, and it's the same with The Chosen, Dallas Jenkins and The Chosen, Angel Studios and Kingdom Story, they've created a business model that Hollywood can't do. And we are seeing more Christian films in the top 10 blockbusters hits every weekend. So there's a film out now called Sight. Everyone should see this, about Dr. Wang from China. They don't go too deep into the faith. This is how they're able to get away with it. But Christianity's on the rise. I mean, Russell Brand, what a horrible person.
Right.
And, you know, connects with so many people because of his past.
Yeah.
He embraced every particular faith. He dissected it. He's a very intelligent man. And then he read Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. My wife used to work for Pastor Rick. It's a 40-day diet. If you don't have a relationship with God for 40 days, it's got little things to help you restore your relationship or get a relationship, or even if you're not sure. And he read it. And then the other part of Russell Brand's story that most people don't know, he has a son with the same illness, congenital heart disease. That wrecked him. The thought that his son may die. And what does this mean? What about my relationship with him? What happens?
What's going to happen to his soul?
So this all ties back into my music. What happens? What happens when we die? Well, the music is there to communicate what God needs to tell you. If you think about me when you're listening to my music, I messed up. Joni Mitchell will tell you that. I mean, it's like, if the music you're listening to makes you think of the artist, that song, it's not a good song. And so my hope is that as people listen, God pours into people what they need to know at that time. Whether it's a birth of a child and they're listening to the music, in the hospital, a funeral. I don't know why my music ends up being like the entrance and the exit soundtrack, but it seems to be resonating with people going through some of the hardest things. I can't even comprehend so many of these things, having walked the path I've walked, you know. So, but again, I'm deeply flawed. I'm human, and I obsess over Jesus and my first passion.
So beautiful. I mean, a billion people have been touched by the music. I mean, it's
crazy.
That is so powerful.
It's really wild.
Like Debbie talked about, her daughter wakes up every day, and it helps inspire her for the day, right? Would you say, what was her motivation behind the music? Why she likes it so much?
Feeling at peace and centered in Christ. Those are her goals.
Yeah.
She's in a tumultuous point in her life with a new baby and working and going to school, and her husband works and goes to school. So that helps recenter her in peace and in Christ, which are priorities for her.
That's so beautiful. There's so much Harvard research on music and how it boosts the immune system. It decreases anxiety and stress and helps with depression. And so whether you're listening to Motley Crue or Taylor Swift, and you're a Swiftie, like let's take Taylor Swift for a minute. I have a niece, Emma. I love this girl. She's 16. She's had some challenges, hard making friends, but she's a Swiftie. Taylor has created, whether you like Taylor or not, a group of people, a community that can belong to each other. And through that, here in these high schools, kids that often come off as odd, they have each other's back.
Yeah, it's true.
And she's like, if I didn't have Taylor, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's helped me get through. So you have to, applaud whoever the artist is, you know. If it's Afro Man and that's helping you get through your day.
Going to get through. Yeah, music is our home therapeutic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think what people are seeing and what I saw when you were on that, so we watched Paul up there, just how real and, you know, people might look at you as like a high-flying Nashville amazing artist with $1 billion, and just how real you're willing to talk about the hard stuff. And I think it's a superpower you have that really makes an impact.
Thank you.
We really
And
appreciate
playing music,
Thank
not
you.
just being yourself authentically, but the music that comes through you has that same frequency,
I
that authenticity and that peace, and your intention behind it to healing
yeah, I really
peace.
and I really appreciate that. You know, I tell people, listen, I have, and a lot of this is influenced by Mozart. You know, he says to utilize the space between the notes. But he also said this in the film Amadeus. Now, it's not a true story. The only thing true about that is the songs he wrote. Yeah, because he was not a vulgar man.
Right.
He was vulgar in the letters he wrote to his wife.
Right. That was it.
So people think he was a vulgar man.
Right.
But went to mass every day, and it was only 20 minutes back then. So probably was good to be a Catholic back then. 20 minutes. But one of the things he used to say is, for whatever imperfections, whatever flaws, whatever you find a fault in me, if you want to know my heart, listen to my music. That's the only excuse I can give to my kids.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's end with that. That was beautiful. It's an absolute honor to have you.
Oh, thank you guys.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, this is awesome.